All right, let's dive right in. There's a report making the rounds. The U.S. has a fully finalized plan to strike Iran. Today, we're going to deconstruct exactly what that report is alleging, from who the specific targets are to the huge potential fallout in the region. You know, it's a super high-stakes game of diplomacy and defiance, so let's get into it.
This right here, this quote, really kicks things off. It's attributed to a key Iranian military commander, Mohammad Pakpour. Our fingers are on the trigger of the missiles buttons. I mean, wow. According to the source material we're looking at today, this one sentence just perfectly captures the razor's edge this whole situation is on. The stakes really couldn't be any higher.
So, what does this supposed plan actually involve? Well, according to this report, we're not talking about some vague threats or just political posturing. No, it lays out what it calls a detailed and apparently finalized plan for American military action.
So the core of this whole thing is this claim, that a comprehensive plan is already on the books to target the very heart of Iran's government and its economy. This wouldn't be some limited symbolic action. We're talking about something far, far more significant, aimed squarely at the country's most critical infrastructure and its top leadership.
And when you look at the alleged targets, they are incredibly specific. And they're not just military sites, which is really interesting. The list includes headquarters for internal security, like the Basij militia, top government council buildings, and, maybe most importantly, the country's economic engine, its national oil company and key facilities. A successful attack on these would be a clear attempt to paralyze both the state and its economy.
But this report claims the plan isn't just about blowing up buildings and infrastructure. Nope, it says it gets personal. The source claims to have identified the specific individuals at the very, very top of the target list.
The focus supposedly narrows down to just 3 key figures, and the report claims these individuals were handpicked for their strategic importance, which would make them the central targets of the entire operation. The goal? To completely disrupt Iran's command and control. First up on the list, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The source identifies him as the ultimate authority, the one with complete control over all of Iran's armed forces. Targeting the head of state, well, that would be a monumental escalation. It's basically an attempt to cut the head off the entire regime.
The second individual is Mohammad Pakpour. He's the commander of the ground forces for the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the report links him directly back to that incredibly defiant quote we started with, kind of painting him as the public face of Iran's readiness to hit back and hit back hard.
And the third target is Ismail Kawani, who heads the elite Quds Force. That's the unit that handles Iran's foreign operations. Now, this is where the report adds a really interesting layer of complexity. It points out that while Israel has accused him of being involved in all sorts of operations, it also raises the possibility that those very claims could be disinformation. It's just a stark reminder of the information warfare that's always playing out in the background.
Now, obviously, a conflict like this would never happen in a vacuum, right? The report claims these alleged U.S. preparations are already sending huge shockwaves through the region, putting America's own allies in a really, really tough spot.
And this is where things get really tricky, because this isn't just a standoff between Washington and Tehran. According to the report, countries that host major U.S. military bases are now caught right in the middle, facing this immense pressure to pick a side.
The report actually singles out Qatar. It alleges that the Qatari government has told the U.S. point blank that it cannot use the massive and critical Al Udeid air base for any hostile action against Iran. And we're talking about everything, from direct strikes to intel gathering to logistical support. The source says Qatar is basically trying to get a guarantee from Iran that its own territory won't be targeted if Iran decides to retaliate.
And to back all this up, the report points to some very concrete military hardware. It claims 12 F-15 fighter jets, along with advanced Patriot and THAAD missile defense systems, have been moved into position. So according to the source, these aren't just words. These are tangible, real-world preparations for a potential fight. The supposed plan also includes a layer of deception. The source claims the U.S. would actually launch attacks from nearby bases in the Gulf, but then publicly say the flights came from distant bases like Diego Garcia. And why would they do that? Well, to give its regional allies some plausible deniability.
So you have to ask, why now? What's the rush? This next section of the report gets into the alleged U.S. justification for such a drastic move and the totally defiant Iranian response it supposedly got back.
The alleged thinking here is all about timing.
The source claims a report was given to the U.S. administration that argues widespread internal protests have seriously weakened the Iranian government. So the assessment is that all this turmoil has created a window of opportunity, a vulnerability that can be exploited.
So, to avoid a strike, the U.S. allegedly offered an ultimatum with 3 non-negotiable conditions. Number 1, stop all uranium enrichment. Number 2, severely limit your missile program. And number 3, end all support for your regional proxy groups. Basically, they're asking for a complete teardown of Iran's strategic power.
And Iran's reported response? Absolutely 100% unequivocal. The source quotes their reaction as, "We throw all 3 conditions in the gutter." I mean, that is not the language of negotiation. It's a statement of total, complete rejection, which, according to this report, leaves very little room for any kind of diplomatic way out.
So this brings us to the final and maybe the most volatile part of this whole analysis, the endgame. With diplomacy supposedly thrown out the window, the source paints a picture of 2 sides with completely different reads on the situation, all operating under this cloud of absolute and total mistrust.
And what you get are these 2 clashing narratives. The U.S. assessment, as reported, sees a weak regime that's on the brink. Iran's counterclaim is that, yeah, there's been an economic hit, but the government is still strong and totally resilient. You can see how a dangerous miscalculation by either side here could be absolutely catastrophic.
And in the end, the report argues that this entire situation is dictated by a deep, profound strategic mistrust. There's a core belief that any talk of diplomacy could just be a cover for a surprise attack. And the source sums up this whole perspective with a really stark conclusion. You can trust the whole world, but not America and Israel. That makes any kind of real de-escalation almost unthinkable. And so we're left with this final question. We've just walked through all the claims from one specific report, but in an era of constant information warfare and posturing, how do you tell the difference between a credible plan and, say, a deliberate leak that's just meant to intimidate? Figuring out where that line is between a threat and a reality, well, that's the ultimate challenge here.